We're on for sentencing today. Is everyone ready to proceed?
Yes.
The people are ready.
And I read both submissions by both parties in terms of letters and things of that nature as well. People move for sentence.
The people move for sentencing, Your Honor. The people do have 3 representatives of the victim who wish to speak. I don't know where Your Honor would like me to have them speak from.
We can stand next to you. The first thing, as you know, the press is here today. I always indicate, you know this because you've been in my corporate before, that the people that are speaking, the civilians that are speaking, have to consent to being videotaped. If they prefer not to, we just need to know that in advance. They will not be videotaped. If they're okay with it, then I'll permit the press to do so. So if you could just have them indicate one way or the other whether they're okay with it or not. If they're not, that's not a problem at all. We won't have that video.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
May they come up, Your Honor?
Yes, please. You want to have one at a time come up by
Yes.
you, the other two can sit?
First will be Ms. Leon from the Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County.
Step up to the microphone, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just please state your name for the record.
Suzanne Leon,
Spell the last name.
Leon.
Thank you. Speak into the mic.
Ms. Leon, are you going to read something?
Yes, I am.
Okay. If you want us to make sure that we have a copy of it, we can make it part of the record as well. Of course, our court reporter will be taking down verbatim what you say, but if we have a copy of it, we'll include that as part of the record as well. Okay?
Thank you.
I'll hear from you at this time.
Your Honor, I'm Suzanne Leon, the Executive Director of the Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County.
I apologize, Ms. Leon. You didn't indicate whether or not you're okay with me.
Oh, yes, sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm Suzanne Leon, Executive Director of the Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Orange County Jewish community. Jews consider the land in which they bury their dead to be hallowed, and cemetery desecration is a profoundly felt violation. Eric Carbonaro, the 2017 senior class president of Seward High School, committed a sacrilegious hate crime by vandalizing the Temple Beth Shalom Cemetery in October 2016. He stands before you now for sentencing. Anti-Semitism is unique in that no other minority has been subjected to continuous persecution and hatred spanning civilizations and millennia. The Jews of the United States have been fortunate. Unlike other nations, this country has been welcoming and accepting of the diaspora Jewish community. But hate crimes against Jews are on the rise across the world, even here in the United States. In 2017, anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. surged 60%. The Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County continuously fields phone calls from individuals and parents in our community whose children are subjected to bullying and taunts simply because they are Jewish. Furthermore, the Holocaust and its horrors are fading from our collective memory, especially among young adults. Among millennials, 40% cannot name a single Nazi extermination camp. And a similar number believe that the number of Jews and others murdered in the Holocaust is greatly exaggerated. It is crucial for our leaders in our executive, legislative, and judiciary to condemn anti-Semitism and bigotry whenever it occurs. Anti-Semitism is not only the enemy of the Jewish people, but a gateway to oppression, racism, xenophobia, and authoritarianism. Words matter. Condemnation matters. The rule of law matters. Your sentencing in this case carries society that condones hate or one that pursues justice for all of its citizens? Today, we will know the answer. Without remorse, there can be no mercy. This young man, who was held in high esteem by many peers in the Florida community, has not expressed any remorse. He has been described by individuals close to the case as inherently evil. The Jewish Federation is asking you to take to heart the feelings of the Orange County Jewish community and consider imposing the maximum penalty for these offenses so that this young man may understand the depravity and the seriousness of the crime that he has committed. We believe it is important to bear in mind the malignant nature of this hate crime and the fact that this act was not simply a teenage prank, but a deliberate act of hate by an individual who bears malice and animus towards the entire Jewish community. We feel it is important to make certain that steps are taken to ensure appropriate rehabilitation and that there is an element of recognition of the evil nature of the crime so that this individual and others like him realize that crimes of this nature and biased motives are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. As such, we ask you to impose upon Mr. Carbonaro the maximum penalty for the offenses to which he pleaded guilty and ask that you reject youthful offender status, which would seal the case and replace the conviction. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your time today. Ms. Cole?
Your Honor, the next speaker on behalf of the victim is the rabbi from the Beth Shalom congregation, which is the cemetery the defendant is charged with conspiring to commit criminal mischief.
So, hello, I am Rabbi Rebecca Pomerantz Schinder.
Speak into the microphone.
No, it went on when she spoke. The light's on.
Thank you.
Before you start, I just wanted to confirm whether you were okay with being videotaped.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I also offer to you my profound thanks for not only inviting our community to write victim impact statements prior to today, but also for you reading them and considering them and enabling them to provide a narrative. It is my hope that our collective stories were able to weave a tapestry, one in which the individual threads and colors combine to create an image. In other words, for that tapestry to provide a picture of a story that began long before October 8th, 2016, and after. I submit that today's sentencing is also about Mr. Carbonaro's story, one that began long before October 8th, 2016, and after. We cannot know for certain what the influences that inspired and motivated him to commit this hate crime that terrorized our community. Parenthetically, I do know that he was not taught that in the Florida school system, nor by any colleague of mine in the interfaith community. We cannot change the past, but we can invest in his future. Perhaps he was motivated by malicious hate, or perhaps simply by reckless ignorance. I do not mean to suggest that this perpetrator was ignorant of the fact that this iconography was inappropriate or hurtful or even illegal to soil our sacred space. What I do hope is that his future story will include punishment that will include the maximum amount of community service possible, as well as receiving tools necessary in order to begin to understand what those symbols did to our community. Your Honor, you may be aware of an article that appeared in the New York Times last month concerning the punishment of young vandals who defaced a historic black schoolhouse in Virginia. They were ordered to read books covering some of history's most divisive times, ranging from the Holocaust to the Jim Crow South to the Salem witch trials. It is within that spirit, with the knowledge that this vandal is a student matriculated at a university, that a segment of his penalty ordered by this court be the mandatory enrollment and successful completion of 2 courses on the Holocaust. I ask that he be required to confront a college curriculum that explores methodically the consequences of the World War I defeat for Germany and how they set the tone possible for the atrocities and genocide that followed in World War II. We cannot know for certain that true rehabilitation for this ignorant man will ever come. But I do believe in its possibility with the organized instruction by a professor, with a syllabus complete with primary sources written by victims and anthologies presented by scholars, and a final examination or project of that material graded by that professor. Again, I ask that he be required to take and pass 2 classes. First, an introductory class, then followed by a higher level, more in-depth one as well. Whereas I hope this newfound knowledge will inspire change in this man's life, as homage to the victims of the Holocaust that had their shame tattooed on their arms as a constant reminder of their terror, I ask that his record not be expunged and follow him all the days of his life. I ask that it remain as a permanent symbol to him, to those who stood idly by him, and to those who may dare copy him. Consequently, his education will not erase his story, but rather enable it to develop and evolve. Perhaps that evolution, complete with mandatory community service and incarceration, will bring the rehabilitation that he and thus we all need. I thank you.
Thank you. So,
Your Honor, the next speaker is a representative of the Beth Shalom congregation as well, Ms. Ball, and she's okay with being photographed as
Yes,
well.
I am. Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good
My name is Sharon Ball. I'm past president of Temple Beth Shalom, and my mom is buried in that cemetery. I proudly speak to you today.
I can tell by how quickly you're going to start speaking. I want to make sure that our court reporter takes down everything you say. Sometimes when we read, especially if we're reading in front of a lot of people, we tend to go very quickly.
Okay, I'll slow
What
down.
you have to say is important, so we want to make sure our court reporter can take it down verbatim, okay?
Yes.
I figured I'd interrupt you before you got started.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I proudly speak to you today on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Temple Beth Shalom. When we at Temple Beth Shalom learned of the hate crime that had been committed at our cemetery, that someone spray-painted swastikas and hateful words on the cemetery wall, we were grief-stricken.
Just want you to slow down a little bit. I want to make sure we get it.
Each and every one of us has been personally injured by this act, and we all felt a pain that can only be described as generations deep. Do you know what it means to lose mothers, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, cousins, and children, innocents all, murdered solely for their religion of birth? Swastika is identified as the single most powerful symbol of hatred. Seeing it painted repeatedly on the low wall sheltering our own kin, violating a place of peace, we understood that someone in our very own community wanted us to know this hatred, to cause us this pain. Many in our generation have lost family members to the Holocaust. Many have family members who survived those terrible years and upon their passing were buried in our little cemetery. Even as each one of us was hurt to the core, we still had varied reactions as to how the young man who perpetrated this crime ought to be treated. Some feel we should embrace him, try to teach him, to show him that all humans deserve respect. Some feel quite strongly that we should make an investment in this boy's soul, that he should be required to take and pass college courses about the Holocaust to understand the true horrors of what he seemed to espouse. Some feel he should perform community service, to meet us face to face and to acknowledge his crime. Some, however, cannot find it in their hearts to be so generous. Their outrage and anger is too strong. Would jail time help him or harden him further? Certainly, we all agreed it is essential that he not be treated as a youthful offender, which would allow this crime to be erased from his record. Even though he was 17 at the time he committed the act, and we would normally favor some understanding and compassion based on his age and immaturity, we know there are extenuating circumstances that need to be taken into consideration. Has he ever admitted he did this? Did he ever say he was sorry? Does he truly feel remorse? He was the president and leader of his graduating class. He should have known right from wrong, and this was not a stupid kid mistake. This was a hate crime. Many of us want to see this boy sentenced accordingly. Jail time, preferably in the county jail, a permanent record to follow, restitution, and that he should be treated as an adult to the fullest extent of the law. As one of our members describes his response in a way that summarizes it for us all. I struggled with my decision. However, when I took into account all the people that he hurt so deeply, the fact that he never confessed, and he made law enforcement and the district attorney work so hard to get him, and the information received from the DA about him as a person, the fact that he was a school leader, it is difficult for us to recommend leniency. Beyond this one person, this case is about our community at large. It's not about the one kid, it's about the next one. We want you, as a judge, to set an example, to make it clear to the community that this behavior cannot and will not be tolerated, that crimes like this have a deep and lasting impact on the victims. And most of all, we want to make it clear that hate is not welcome here. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Kohler?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the defendant, Eric Carbonaro, stands in front of you awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty on February 21st, 2018 to 2 Class E felonies, tampering with physical evidence and conspiracy to commit criminal mischief as a hate crime. The defendant has committed 3 crimes that cannot be tolerated in our society and must be punished with at least some incarceration. First, the defendant tampered with physical evidence. The defendant, knowing that the police were investigating a crime, asked 2 separate witnesses to not only destroy electronic evidence that he knew the state police wanted to look at, he also asked the witnesses to lie to the New York State Police. When defendants are permitted to attempt to manipulate witnesses and attempt to destroy evidence, it undermines our entire criminal justice system. The defendant's attempt to manipulate the system of justice goes against the very process that this court has sworn to uphold. A civilized society of laws cannot simply accept when there is a blatant effort by a felon to undermine and manipulate the lawful investigation into his crimes. Secondly, the defendant conspired to commit criminal mischief by damaging a cemetery. No matter what religion one is, there must be one sacred place where people can take solace their deceased loved ones will be safe. Society must have that peace of mind. Thirdly, and perhaps most despicable, the defendant conspired to commit a hate crime by conspiring to commit that criminal mischief in such a fashion as to target Temple Beth Shalom and the Temple Beth Shalom congregation. The defendant conspired to draw and write the most hateful anti-Semitic markings and wording. He targeted the particular group based upon their religion, a true hate crime. When the defendant conspired to commit the hate crime, he did so with purpose and determination. It was a premeditated attack on the sensibilities of our society, our community, and everything that we hold sacred and protect, from our religious beliefs to the memories of our loved ones, and goes against the very integrity of our criminal justice system. The defendant chose to commit the hate crime at Temple Beth Shalom Cemetery, fully knowing the damage, the hurt, the destruction that it would cause. And that was the sole reason why he committed that crime. It was a premeditated hate crime. The people have reviewed the pre-sentence report, and it indicates that the defendant accepts no responsibility for his actions and does not show remorse for his actions by him not giving a statement to the probation officer. This, coupled with the fact that the defendant is a high school graduate, a graduate of a class that he was chosen to speak at the graduation ceremony, shows that the defendant clearly understands history and had the initiative and desire and drive to achieve his personal goals. He exercises adult maturity and demonstrates adult motivation, and does so, now we see, in a criminal way as well. The fact that the defendant committed such a premeditated hate crime shows that there is no indication that any sort of diversity training would fit him, nor are there any programs that would suit him. Since the defendant committed these crimes, he was at an eligible youthful offender status based upon his age. For the reasons just discussed, the people would strongly oppose youthful offender adjudication. The people feel that alleviating the defendant from the burden of his felony conviction that he earned and the court properly accepted would be in no way justice. Again, Eric Carbonaro does not stand in front of you as a child who did not understand his actions. He stands in front of you as a man who understands history, as an individual who, through his conduct, demonstrated he understood his actions, he was proud of them, and he was aware of his consequences, and the intended consequences are what happened and what we heard from Miss Leon, the rabbi at Temple Beth Shalom, and Miss Ball, who represented the entire community. The pure devastation of the entire Jewish community who saw that cemetery or heard about that cemetery in October 2016. Eric Carbonaro knew everything he was doing, and he did it because he understood and chose to do it, and he chose to do it where he did it, at the cemetery. His criminal record should reflect the crime he committed. He should have the felony convictions on his permanent record, and that would reflect the hurt that he forever caused. The act, the crime, the consequences should not and cannot in any way be associated with the term youthful indiscretion. The people would ask that you order the restitution to the Temple Beth Shalom in the amount of $774.95. It should be noted that although this is the amount of out-of-pocket loss that we are allowed to request through the criminal justice system, this amount does not reflect and does nothing to make the congregation whole. It simply covers the cost of the paint. The congregation and Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County and the entire Jewish Federation donated over $60,000 to rebuild the wall and now have to install security cameras in order to ensure that their loved ones are protected, something that they should have expected to have happened back in October of 2016. This is a case that has to be taken seriously. We must send a clear message that there is absolutely no room for the commission of tampering with our criminal justice system, hateful desecration of religious property and hate crimes here in Orange County. The only appropriate sentence is one that includes incarceration. The people ask that you do not replace the defendant's felony conviction with youthful offender, as it unjustly rewards him using the very system that he tried to defraud. And we also ask that you sentence the defendant to 6 months in Orange County Jail, followed by 5 years of probation with that restitution. And if the community service is ordered by Your Honor, if that community service is ordered to be performed in Orange County, the very community that he has devastated. No, Your Honor.
Mr. Smith?
Thanks, Judge. I agree with one of the speakers that there's been a frightening increase of anti-Semitic incidents around the country. Last year, for the first time, anti-Semitic incidents just on schools and college campuses doubled. In my view, putting teenagers in jail will do nothing to address this growing problem of hatred and bigotry. Putting teenagers in jail will not prevent or address the kind of violence we saw last year in Virginia. Nor do I believe that saddling teenagers like Eric with felony convictions for the rest of their lives is going to do anything to combat this type of influence. I strongly disagree with one speaker who indicated that because the SS physically branded those poor souls in the camps, then that means that Eric should somehow, in effect, be branded for the rest of his life. I find that suggestion to be troubling. If a 40 or 50-year-old person was standing next to me, I might feel different. But Eric is a teenager. The only way, in my view, to combat this ignorance, especially because it's historical ignorance, is education and more education. So I agree with the speakers that have suggested that. I fully agree that the court requires a comprehensive program of education, not just into the Holocaust, but into the pre-war years, and even more importantly, into the aftermath. Eric has to understand that what happened in this cemetery is not just painful, I'm not mitigating the pain in any way, but it's also part and parcel of this growth of neo-Nazi activities in supposedly progressive countries. Eric's generation is going to have to cope with this. If I understood Ms. Kohler correctly, she doesn't believe there's correct or appropriate educational opportunities out there. That's what she meant. I disagree. I've been in touch with a few Holocaust centers, and I have education directors in 2 of them ready to take Eric in to make use of their resources. And that includes courses, written materials, meetings with survivors of the Nazi camps, and in one center, eventual sponsorship when Eric is ready to speak to younger students in the hopes that they won't make these kinds of mistakes. We have also looked into having Eric visit one or more of the camps in Europe. I have been advised, though, that to get a full understanding of the different types of these camps, it might be better to make use of the facilities of the National Holocaust Museum in Washington rather than travel abroad. We are still getting information on this issue, but as soon as possible, we intend that Eric spend a full day at the National Museum. Now, Your Honor's received dozens of letters on Eric's behalf, and they describe a young person who's already been punished quite severely for this. His hopes of going to Annapolis are gone. But the letters also indicate that he's got the intellectual capacity to learn from this, and he's got the speaking ability to assist younger people, as I said, to not take these types of mistakes. And with Your Honor's permission, I'm just going to read a couple of brief excerpts from a few of these letters. The first was from a student younger than Eric, who says, Eric has been my peer tutor for 3 years while I was in middle school and he was in high school. I always struggled in math, but Eric had a way of breaking it down for me and helping me understand it when no others could. He always took his time and explained it slowly to me when others would always lose their patience. Because of Eric, I have been on the honor roll throughout middle school. I truly believe I would not have been able to achieve that if I didn't have Eric as my peer tutor. Another letter, Your Honor, from a director of religious education in Orange County. I have known Eric for about 15 years. He has always been an outstanding young man. Eric volunteered in our program and did an amazing job. Eric was always there when you needed help. He consistently showed such wonderful qualities as he is dependable, responsible, honest, and courteous. Eric has a gift to communicate with the very young children as well as the senior citizens in our community. A letter from an older cousin. The academic successes that he had in high school led the school to appoint Eric as the commencement speaker at his graduation. This shows how highly the school community thinks of him. Eric has also been an active volunteer within his church community, showing how devoted to serving and helping others he has been. Eric had been a candidate for Annapolis, but upon having these charges pressed against him, he is no longer in consideration. These events have negatively impacted his life greatly in this way. From a friend in New York City. It would be a tremendous misfortune if, in addition to all the damage and negative repercussions already experienced by all parties, all the pain and distress already created, as well as many other adverse consequences, one would have to add an impossible obstacle for Eric to move forward with his life, especially given the fact that he is still only 19 years old. Where would we all be if our foolish and juvenile actions would mark us so deeply and indelibly that we would not be able to move forward in life as we grow older and learn life lessons based on unhappy mistakes we made in our youth? What happened was wrong, and there is no real excuse for it. However, I think that Eric does deserve a second chance, and the best way in which he can prove that he has learned from this experience is by moving forward with his life with what he has learned from all this and avoid similar and/or worse situations. Society will benefit immensely from having an active young man with his entire life ahead of him who has learned a very important lesson and will put it into practice as he develops into a fully grown, respectable, and responsible member of society. And lastly, Judge, from a priest who is also a PhD. It seems to me that his young and promising life ought not to be ruined by a youthful indiscretion. His talents are many, and he could be a source of much good for society if he is allowed to move on, having learned a painful lesson. Please note that I make these observations as a priest and lifelong educator, with decades of experience dealing with high school and college students and years of teaching psychology. Thus, I have a good grasp of what types of punishment work best for particular persons and situations. Please know as well that I am not adverse to strong medicine when I believe that approach is warranted and helpful. I do not see the current case as falling within those parameters. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Carbonaro, the law affords you an opportunity to hear it before and after the sentence. You're not required to say anything. If you want to say something, now would be the time to say it. Is there anything you'd like to say?
I'm deeply sorry to the Jewish community and the community as a whole.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
One of the things that's extremely interesting about this case specifically is that if it happened a year from now, we wouldn't even be accountable. Our legislature has deemed it appropriate to pass a raise the age law, which would make this a crime that would be handled in family court, not our county court. It would not be the same severity in terms of its criminal nature. However, our legislature also, specifically to address something Ms. Leon mentioned, has enhanced crimes like this. This would have been a misdemeanor crime had it not been designated a hate crime. Because it is a hate crime, it's been elevated to a felony. And that's the conspiracy aspect. Tampering was already a felony. The words behind me, in God we trust. People probably ask, how did God let something like the Holocaust happen? But truly, that's the wrong question. The question should be, how did we let it happen? And we let it happen because we stayed silent, because we didn't react appropriately at the appropriate time. And so we have to be ever vigilant to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Carbonaro is not being sentenced today for the travesties of the Holocaust, for the evils of the Holocaust. He's being sentenced today for the crime that he committed, as horrible as it is. Now, it's important to recognize that the swastika that was used is the symbol of evil. And that's why there's been such a reaction in terms of where you placed it and how it was placed. I am not comfortable today affording you a youthful offender adjudication. I will tell you that now. So we can get that out of the way up front. However, what moved me significantly with respect to many of the letters was the concept of a second chance. The concept of someone having redeeming qualities, like some of the letters that were submitted on your behalf in connection with your application to our academy. Someone saw redeeming qualities in you as a leader. However, your actions in connection with this case show that you have the capability to lead the wrong way, to lead with hatred, to lead with evil symbolism. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to demonstrate that you should be worthy of a youthful offender adjudication. It's not going to come without a cost, though. Today you will be remanded to the Orange County Jail. And we'll bring you back here in August, which will be the equivalent of the 6-month split that the DA is recommending. You're going to be placed on 1 year of interim probation. You'll start that probation after you serve your comp time in the Orange County Jail. I'm not promising you you're going to get a youthful offender adjudication. What I would indicate to you is that you should heed the suggestions of some of the speakers here today. I'm not going to require you to do anything other than the standard terms and conditions of probation. Because at the end of the day, I can't make a drug addict go to treatment. It's not helpful. They have to embrace it. They have to accept it themselves. So you need to determine what's going to change your perspective and what's going to give your attorneys the best arguments to try to convince not only me, but your community to see you as a youthful offender that had a youthful indiscretion, however severe. What we're going to do today is, again, because it's not a final sentence of probation at this point, you're going to be remanded to the Orange County Jail without bail. We're going to adjourn your case until Thursday, August 30th. Bring you back on that day, and I'm going to let you know you're going to be released on that day. What you do between August 30th and February 20th of next year, February 19th, 2019, will dictate ultimately whether you will be treated as a youthful offender or whether you're going to have these felony convictions for the rest of your life. Ms. Kolick had indicated that you have the drive, the desire to achieve your goals. You need to refocus that drive and that desire to demonstrate that you have changed, that this was simply a youthful indiscretion, and that you've made a difference. And I'm telling you, if you come back and you just stayed out of trouble, and you just follow the terms and conditions of probation and you've done nothing else, I will not consider a youthful offender adjudication. You need to demonstrate to me, as well as to your community, that you deserve the second chance. You have to earn the second chance. I'm not willing to give it to you today, but I am willing to give you the opportunity to demonstrate to me and to your community that you're worthy of that second chance. So I'm going to give you terms and conditions of interim probation. When you get out of jail in August, you're going to start community service as well. Over that 8-month period, you're required to do about a minimum of 150 hours of community service in Orange County. I can guarantee you that will not be all of the community service you're going to be sentenced to. That's just between now and February 19th. The first step to you earning the potential youthful offender adjudication is for you to accept the punishment that you're receiving in terms of incarceration today. The second step is up to you. You have to make a determination what you're willing to do in order to convince me and your community that you should be afforded a youthful offender adjudication. Only you have the power to convince us. So I would suggest that you focus that desire, focus that drive, focus the leadership skills some of our community leaders saw in you when they recommended you to an academy. And make a change in your life. We're adjourned at this point until August 30th. Please remain without bail. You'll be served with a copy of the orders and conditions of interim probation. That'll start gets out of jail on August 30th, and it'll continue through February 17th of 2019, when he comes back for his ultimate sentence.